Hi, and welcome everybody to another edition of the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Podcast. My name is Ross Benjamin of rbwins.com. And like every Thursday, and it is Thursday, September the 22nd, I'm joined by Mr. Doug Upstone of docsports.com. Doug, what goes it?
Oh, what goes it is the reason I'm smiling in part. I mean, just I try to anyways all the time, but we've had rain the last couple of days, Ross, and
Ah,
in the rest of the world or most of the rest of the world, that would mean absolutely nothing. But here, it's a
yeah,
big deal, and for in this particular area, the last 2 days we've actually have had more rain than any place else in the surrounding Phoenix area. So puts a smile on my face to see, I mean, the sunshine's great, but a little rain never hurts, from
yeah,
that standpoint, especially when you're
absolutely.
in the midst of a drought and all these other things. But hey, you know what? We got football, and we actually even have Thursday night football from college, which excites me.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that back along with the NFL. A couple of the games even tonight I'm actually interested to check out and see what's going on. That for me personally, the Cleveland Pittsburgh game, nothing great, but there's some good action certainly up this upcoming weekend. We know that, Ross.
Yes, absolutely. And I know, do you have anything going tonight that you could sell to the viewers?
Well, the only thing I can nothing to sell. I didn't like it. Like I said, didn't like the NFL game at all. And actually, though, this would be a bonus free play. Let's just call it that. I actually like Coastal Carolina and Georgia State over the 63 tonight. So
Very
that's the
good.
only thing I have going there. But yeah, but otherwise good. I actually like Virginia Tech a little bit, but just not enough to pull the trigger and say, okay, make it a play. Just not quite there. Just had enough, as you know, just had enough to where just like, just can't do it.
Yeah, I do have a play on that game, and I also have a play in the Cleveland and Pittsburgh game, and that's
Good
at
for
my
you.
website, rbwins.com. And I'm off to a great start, Doug. 9 and
Oh, I
4 in
know.
the NFL and 20 and 11 college football, NFL combined. So again, folks, it's rbwins.com, rbwins.com. You can get those picks. Anyway, Doug, any interesting notes you want to talk about in the world of football? And by the way, folks, stay tuned. We're going to have 2 NFL free picks for you on Sunday's card. Before we get to that, Doug, your thoughts?
Well, the only thing that as everybody has seen, the unders are 22-10 in the NFL so far. Okay, and so with that, what has caused that? Well, I believe maybe you agree or disagree, but I again go back to the lack of playing in the preseason. And so the continuity of the offenses certainly isn't there. And I think that's the biggest drawback, that we've seen is because of that or the lack of that, and you go back to, you could actually, if it wasn't for, you'd have a couple more. If Miami hadn't had the tremendous comeback, that probably would have been an under as well. And so, but I do think that now everybody's got 2 games under their belt. And so I think we're going to start seeing things get whatever normal means in the NFL. I think we're going to start to see things kind of get back to normal more. And so I wouldn't be surprised, like this week, for example, and the odds makers too, by the way, if we, 16 games, if we saw an 8-8, 9-7, or 7-9 with the over and under, that would not surprise me at all.
No, and that's whatsoever. I mean, I've mentioned it a few times over our broadcast over the last couple of seasons that anytime you see a trend, a league-wide trend like that, that's lopsided, meaning all the unders compared to overs, it's just a matter of time before that turns because NFL betting history will show you through the years. There's very few betting trends, meaning not specific teams, but such things like the over and unders. If there's a heavy amount of unders versus overs over a 2-week period of time or more, you could rest assured that that's going to even off over the long stretch because the numbers will show that. Oh, I mean, my database shows that, and I go back to 1980 in the NFL. So again, yes, I do think that starters not playing with a lot of these teams during the preseason has certainly had an effect on that. And the odds makers really didn't adjust those totals. They're using the totals more based on public perception and their numbers from the year before. And there's not a big sample size up until this point. and those numbers don't reflect the starters not playing during the preseason, Doug. So that's my opinion and how I view it anyway. So any thoughts in that regard?
Yeah. I agree with everything that you're saying. I mean, you can't have continuity. I mean, it doesn't matter the sport, and when you have a sport like football that involves 11 individuals on offense, I mean, this isn't, one person going up to bat in baseball. This isn't five players on a basketball court. Okay. You have to have that continuity in order to find a rhythm, have something going on. I mean, look at the Cardinals last week. Perfect example. Now, you can blame the Raiders all you want, which they deserve some blame, but they played 6 terrible quarters of offense.
Yeah.
Arizona did, and all of a sudden they found just a little bit of rhythm, and all of a sudden Kyler Murray got a little bit more time. All of a sudden he starts running around like what he does best, and here came the Cardinals offense, just like that. So I mean, it's a perfect example, at least in theory, that's what happened. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Cardinals offense does a fairly decent job again this weekend too.
Yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize enough the rarity of what we saw last week with those 3 blown leads by Baltimore, Las Vegas,
And
and
Cleveland.
Cleveland
I
was,
remember that one.
I know you do. I know
I'm
you
good
do.
on that.
Yeah, so the not Jacksonville, the New York Jets coming back to win that game down 13 with less than 2 minutes to play. It was a perfect storm. And so don't get caught up with that, folks, because I could hear people now, well, I'm down 21, but what about last week? There may be 1 or 2 that happen like that a week going forward. I think that's even being a high number when I say that.
Great.
So in any event, Doug, we got some free plays in the NFL on Sunday. We're going to start with you. It comes in the NFC West matchup between what you just touched upon, the Arizona Cardinals and the LA Rams. What do you
Yes,
got,
and
my
so
friend?
yeah, this is good. Everything's kind of going on, and a lot of people are wondering, hey, what's wrong with the Rams? Okay, what are they doing? What are they doing? Why come they're not playing so well? Well, the truth of the matter is, Ross, you know this. Many of the people watching this video know this. Super Bowl championship. That's the biggest problem. Okay, they won it. Okay, they accomplished their goals. They met everything they wanted to do. It was a lifetime dream for many of these players. It happens each and every year. And there's a very specific reason why no team has repeated as Super Bowl champions since the New England Patriots of 2003 and 2004. Matthew Stafford so far, well, it sure looks like he put that Detroit helmet back on with the way he's throwing the ball around. He's got 5 interceptions already. But part of the problem with his 5 interceptions is what is Sean McVay's offense based on? It's based on the running game. And right now, the running game is next to last in yards per game and dead last in yards per carry at 2.7. Now, the LA defense has not been as physical or as tough to this juncture. Now, they have created 7 turnovers, so that's good. But just the hunger, the desire, you can see it in their play. It just hasn't been there. Now, I'm not going to take anything away from Buffalo. Buffalo is just awesome right now. I mean, so right until Buffalo does something different, it doesn't matter who they're going to play. But Atlanta, there's no way in the world. Yes, they had a blocked punt, that gave up 7 points, but it should have never come down to that. No. So now, conversely, we got Arizona. Like I mentioned, 6 horrible quarters of football, overcame a 20-point deficit on the road. Their offense, as I mentioned, it's built on rhythm. That's just the design of it. And when Kyler Murray is improvising, particularly with his legs, this is a completely different team. Point spread, Ross, 3.5 on the Rams. Okay. I'm really uncomfortable with that half-point hook, I got to admit. And then I look at Arizona, 4-13 at home. Okay. So against the spread. So I'm going to shift gears and look at the total. The last 4 meetings between these teams, the last 4 meetings, the total has been 49 or higher. In three of those instances, the game went over. I think both offenses have more than enough to keep things going, okay, based on how they played last week. And they're both making mistakes at the same time, which I think can lead to points to set up the offense in this case. Neither team is at the top of their game. So for this NFC West, I'm going to think this could be a higher scoring affair, and I'm going to say it lands somewhere in the 50s, and I'm back in the over, Ross.
What's your number, Doug? What's your number on that?
48.
48. That's a pretty good number if you're going over in this matchup. As you alluded, 3 out of the last 4 meetings have gone over the total. And the Rams specifically, Doug, are one team that did not play their starters throughout the preseason. And it's shown a little bit. And the other side of that, Doug, I think the lack of running game has more to do with their offensive line than the running backs itself. They had some changeover there and very shaky on the offensive line protecting. I mean, they gave up 7 sacks against Buffalo in week 1. I'm not sure what their numbers were in week 2. I can't think off the top of my head, but that spells trouble if you're a LA Rams backer with your offensive line. So can't disagree with that pick. LA Rams and the Arizona Cardinals over 48 from Mr. Doug Upstone of DocSports.com. I'm going to take a look at the Jacksonville Jaguars and the LA Chargers. You know, Doug, I've had substandard years in football not living up to my standards the last 2 years during football season. And I trace it back to, as you know, you do this yourself. When things aren't going as good as you want them to do, you have to tweak something along the way. You don't have to make a knee-jerk reaction, but over the course of time, you evaluate what you've been doing and what you were doing differently when you had all those years that were very, very successful. And mine is I got away from my technical handicapping over the last couple of years and not used it as much as I should. So what I did starting this year is I've leaned more on my technical handicapping. The results to me have shown me that that was a nice move on my part because I'm 20-11 in college football and NFL to start the year. And this is no different. This matchup here, Jacksonville and the Chargers laying 7 in this game. This opened at 10. Justin Herbert's status has a lot to do with that line moving because he broke I guess a torn rib cage muscle or a broken rib cage, whatever. But a very painful injury for anybody, let alone a football player. And so as a result, it's come down to 7. I'm feeling like if this line will not come down any lower. And if Justin Herbert's status becomes clear that he's definitely going to play, I think we'll see an escalation of this line between 8 and 9. Now, Jacksonville is coming off a 24-0 upset win over Indianapolis last week as a 6.5-point underdog. And here's my technical side. Anytime you have an NFL home favorite of 3.5 or greater, like the Chargers are in this matchup, and they're playing in games 2 through 6, so early in the season, and they're facing an opponent coming off a straight-up underdog win by 21 points or more, like Jacksonville is coming off of, those NFL home favorites of 3.5 or greater have gone 13-0 straight up in ATS since 1980, and the average margin of victory, 14.7 points per game, which heavily favors the Raiders the Chargers in this situation. Jacksonville, in addition, 0-18 straight up in their last 18 away games, including 2-8 against the spread as an away underdog of 9.5 or less. And since 2010, the Chargers are 7-0 straight up in ATS as a favorite when facing the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they won those 7 games by 22.1 points per contest. I'm going with the LA Chargers -7 over the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I like it. Put me down. Where do I pay?
You pay at rbwins.com.
Okay. I just want to make sure I heard that right.
Anyway, Doug, Tell the folks where they can find you and what you got coming up and how you've been doing of late.
Yes, well, the college football. Okay, I got a 7 unit best bet. The last 2 weeks, I've hit both of my 7 unit best bets, and in NFL, I got a 6 unit best bet going on Sunday in a game. And since last year, 28 and 16 on 6 or 7 unit plays in football. That's college and pro. 63% or 64%, right around there. But the important thing is up over $6,000 based
Wow.
on $6,100 based on units. So big plays have been my specialty of late. Like I said, I've had won 4 of the last 5 years in a winning season so far in college football. And in the NFL, I'd be actually a winning season, except for the Cleveland Browns last week. But that's water under the bridge, and so we're going to let that go. At least I'll sound like I pretend like I care, like I'm going to let that go.
So you know those games all even out, right, Doug?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, what am I thinking? It's just around the corner, Ross, isn't it?
Take that little black book
Hey,
out.
hey, you
Take
know
that
what? The
little black
glass
book.
is always half full. Okay.
Take that little
Yes.
black book out with all those overtime losses and
Yeah, that's
bad
all.
beat.
Hey, you know what? That's for losers, not for guys like me. Now, I never worry about that stuff at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And so that's been good. We also have Major League Baseball tonight. For example, I got a 6 unit best bet, won a 5 unit yesterday, 16 and 8 so far in September. And
You
as you know, September is not an easy month to
know,
win baseball in. And believe me, until the last 2 years, I was candidate A to prove that. But for whatever reason, last 2 years found a little magic. So trying to make it happen to close out the regular season, Ross.
yeah, it all sounds good to me. I mean, September baseball is difficult, folks. The reason being is a lot of teams are out of the race, and there's a lot of big lines as a result. And also, you get a lot of call ups from the minors. So teams that are out of playoff contention, you don't know who they're going to use from night to night. And anyway, it's not an exact science because some of those teams do come through as a big underdog, but the likelihood of that happening on a regular basis is very, very low. And I'm coming off a 3-0, or actually 3-0 this week, I should say, in Major League Baseball. I do pick my spots at this time of year, and especially on the weekends, folks. My focus is on football because it's business 101. That's what people want. And I would be remiss not to put a lot of focus on football at this time of year. When the baseball playoffs come, equal focus. But right now, picking my spots in baseball, 20-11 to start the year in the NFL and college football. And folks, you can find me at rbwins.com. Doug, any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, it's just we talked about it the other day. There's a number of games. I'm just so curious about that James Madison Appalachian State game. I know it's on nobody's radar. I get
Yeah.
it. Okay, and there's no reason to, but just as a football fan and seeing what has happened with Appalachian State the last 2 weeks, I'm just really curious to see. And of course, we don't really know. We know of James Madison, but we don't know about James Madison. So that's one that really intrigues me. And the other aspect, which I think has made at least for my way of thinking, having 9 home underdogs in week 3 of the NFL, boy, that's a confusing aspect when you realize they're 9-5-1 so far. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit, it's having to think of a variety of things, what makes sense and what doesn't,
Yeah.
and then how to parse it out and make it work for you.
Yeah, I mean, we saw something similar in week 1, and not all. Yeah, it was a lot
Yeah,
of home
similar.
underdogs in week
Yep.
1.
Yep.
Yes, so yeah, and the home underdogs, as I recall, did very well in week 1. But again, things change when you start no-braining your way through it by saying, "Well, the home underdogs are so far this year 16-8." I'm being hypothetical. You just can't use that as a premise to make a pick without looking at anything else, is what I'm trying to say, folks. And neither one of us do that. Again, Doug, you could find him at docsports.com. You could find me at rbwins.com. Doug will be back with us on Monday once again, and we look forward to that. And Mr. Upstone, I hope you have a great weekend, personally and business-wise. And I'm sure you're going to knock them dead this weekend because your track history speaks for itself. Again, folks, until the next time, for Doug Upstone and Ross Benjamin, I'd like to wish each and every one of you all the very best. Take care. God bless.